Something feels different around this Steelers team right now. And no, I'm not talking about hype. Every offseason brings hype. Every fan base convinces itself that this is finally the year. But when you start looking closely at the pieces being put together in Pittsburgh, some details are starting to stand out. And they could end up changing the entire identity of this football team. Because hidden underneath all the headlines and all the attention surrounding Aaron Rodgers, there is a much bigger story developing. There are major changes happening on both sides of the football, and if these pieces fit together the way the organization hopes they will, Steelers fans may be watching a team that looks completely different from what we've seen over the last few seasons. And one of the biggest questions right now revolves around what this offense is actually going to become. Because while many fans automatically hear the names Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy and immediately start thinking about a familiar system, things may not be that simple. We have a lot to analyze here, so click the like button and write in the comments, "Go Steelers." Now, the foundation of the offense may still feel recognizable. Expect elements of the West Coast concepts to remain present. Quick passing concepts, shotgun formations, timing-based throws. Those things are likely not disappearing. Aaron Rodgers has always been at his best when operating within structures that allow him to diagnose defenses quickly and make decisions efficiently. But there may be one major difference that could dramatically change how Pittsburgh attacks defenses this season. Vertical passing. Mike McCarthy has built much of his offensive identity around pushing the football down the field. We've seen it before. We saw it with Dak Prescott in Dallas. We saw it during earlier years with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Stretching defenses vertically has consistently been one of McCarthy's trademarks. And now the question becomes very interesting. Do the Steelers finally have the weapons to make that happen consistently? Because if you compare this roster to last season, there appears to be more downfield potential available. Short concepts and screens will likely remain part of the offense because that has always been part of Rodgers' game. But if Pittsburgh starts becoming more aggressive vertically, defenses may be forced to defend the entire field rather than sitting underneath routes waiting for quick throws. And suddenly, everything changes. Because if the passing game becomes more explosive, it doesn't just help Aaron Rodgers. It changes the math for everybody. It changes how defenses align. It changes how safeties play. It changes running lanes. It changes how opponents prepare week after week. But while the offense creates intrigue, there may actually be another side of this football team that is creating even bigger excitement. The defense. Because there is a growing belief that Pittsburgh may have quietly assembled one of the most talented defensive groups they've had in years. Patrick Graham is entering a situation that feels very different from many of his previous stops. Throughout his coaching career, he's often been praised for maximizing difficult situations and getting production from rosters that weren't overflowing with elite talent. But now he's stepping into Pittsburgh with arguably the most talented defensive personnel he's had available. Look at some of the additions being discussed. Sebastian Joseph Day on the defensive line, Jamel Dean added at corner, Jaquan Brisker at safety, and that's being added to a defense that already had considerable talent in place. Then you look at the pass rush depth, and suddenly it starts becoming difficult not to get excited. Because depth matters across a long NFL season. Injuries happen. Rotations matter. Fresh legs matter in December and January. And there is a growing feeling that this Steelers pass rush group may be as deep as nearly any unit in football. But here's where things get even more interesting. Because talent alone doesn't guarantee anything. Steelers fans have seen talented teams before. Potential wins nothing. Execution wins. And Patrick Graham now has an opportunity to prove whether he can take all these moving parts and transform them into something special. If he can, this defense may not simply be good, It could have the ceiling to become one of the most dangerous units in the NFL. But do you actually believe that? Or are Steelers fans getting carried away too early? Drop your opinion in the comments right now. Can this Steelers defense become elite this season? Yes or no? But even with all that excitement surrounding the defense, there are still some major question marks that could determine whether this team becomes a true contender or simply another team stuck in the middle. And the biggest one may be standing right in front of Aaron Rodgers, the offensive line. Because when you really start looking at this group, there is a fascinating mix of upside and uncertainty all over the place. The potential is there. Nobody questions that. But potential and production are two very different things. Troy Fautanu, moving to the left side, immediately becomes one of the biggest storylines to watch. He played there in college and looked outstanding, which gives fans reasons to be optimistic. Then you have Mason McCormick moving back to left guard, another transition that creates both opportunity and uncertainty. And then the right side becomes where things start getting really interesting. Because suddenly, Pittsburgh has choices to make. Do they trust younger players and allow them to develop quickly? Or do they rely on veteran options for stability? That's where some of the major unknowns begin to appear. If younger players step in immediately, can they handle NFL speed from day one? Can they protect a veteran quarterback? Can they win consistently in the AFC North, where every game feels like trench warfare? Because let's be honest, in this division, offensive line play isn't optional. It's survival. You have to move people off the line of scrimmage. You have to protect your quarterback. And that becomes even more critical considering Aaron Rodgers at this point in his career isn't relying on mobility anymore. This isn't the version of Rodgers escaping pressure for 10 seconds and throwing across his body 50 yards downfield. Now you're talking about more of a pocket passer, a quarterback who needs structure around him. And if that protection breaks down, everything changes. Suddenly, those deep passing concepts become harder to execute. Suddenly, timing gets disrupted. Suddenly, the offense that looked explosive on paper starts looking very different on Sundays. But here's the thing that keeps bringing optimism back into the conversation. Even with these question marks, there seems to be a growing belief that the floor for this Steelers team remains surprisingly high. The feeling around this roster isn't that Pittsburgh is hoping to become competitive. The feeling is that they're already competitive. Now they're trying to determine how high the ceiling actually is. Because if the offense reaches even borderline top 10 territory, while the defense reaches its full potential, now we're talking about something serious. We're talking about a team with an elite defense and an offense capable of making enough explosive plays to win big football games. That's where conversations about playoff runs begin. That's where Super Bowl conversations start entering the room. And maybe that's exactly why expectations around Pittsburgh feel different this year. Not because there aren't concerns. There absolutely are. Not because there aren't risks. There absolutely are. But because for the first time in a while, there seems to be a realistic path where almost everything actually works. Now I want to hear from Steelers Nation. How many wins do you realistically think Pittsburgh gets this season? Drop your prediction in the comments right now. And if you enjoyed this update, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest Steelers news, rumors, and breakdowns. Here we go, Steelers.